Kade stands over a man who broke his rule. The warehouse is silent, cold air. Steady breathing from the guards lined across the wall. The man on the floor shakes, his hands tied, eyes locked on Kade as if he already knows the ending. Everyone in that room knows the rule. Betrayal has one cost. Kade's men watch him closely, waiting for the nod he always gives. The nod that ends the moment. But something is different. Kade isn't looking at the man on the ground. He is lost in a memory, one voice softening the steel in him. Lunara's voice. He hears it as clear as if she were right beside him. It slows his breath. It steadies his hand. It pushes back the anger that once controlled him without effort. His second in command steps forward, whispering, "Say the word." Kade doesn't move. Instead, he turns away. The guards are tense, confused. The man on the floor gasps, shocked that he is still alive. For the first time in years, Kade walks out without enforcing his rule. One thought guides him. Her. Before the story moves forward, let me speak to you directly. Have you ever protected someone, even when you knew it would cost you something? Have you ever felt your whole life shift because of one person who didn't even try to change you? Have you ever met someone whose voice stayed with you long after they walked away? Kade lived by strict rules. He trusted no one. He punished betrayal without second thoughts. Nothing touched his heart, until a woman with calm eyes and a quiet presence stepped into his world. Her kindness softened a man who spent years guarding himself. Her gentleness reached places he thought were locked forever. Many of us know that feeling. Someone enters your life, and without force, they change how you move, how you think, how you react. If you've ever had a person like that, someone who shifted your steps with simple kindness, this story will speak to you. Kade spent years building a world governed by a single rule. Break loyalty, face the consequence. It kept his empire steady. It kept his heart protected. But love does not follow rules. Lunara entered his life with small acts of kindness that challenged everything he believed. She never asked for his trust. She never pushed for space in his world. Yet she changed him more than fear or power ever did. This created a problem he never expected. A man who lived by strict order found himself questioning the rule that shaped his entire life. His men could feel the shift. The streets felt it too. The story that follows shows how love tested a system built on hardness and control. It shows how one gentle woman held influence in a place where softness was never welcome. Stay with this story, because what comes next explains everything. You will see how a woman with a calm heart changed the life of a man who never let anyone close. You will see how her voice guided him in moments when anger once led the way. You will see how love pushed him to make choices no one expected from a man with his power. If you want to know how a feared billionaire learned mercy from someone who never judged him, keep watching. If you want to understand how one person can shift the direction of a life, stay till the end. This story shows how a soft presence can influence a strong man in ways strength alone never could. Before we go deeper into this story, I want to welcome you. Thank you for watching, whether you are new or returning to the Lord of Hearts family. If you enjoy stories that teach life lessons, inspire growth, and remind you that love still changes people, make sure you support the channel. Your support helps these stories reach more viewers who need them. Take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who loves meaningful stories, and subscribe so you never miss a new upload. Now let's continue, because Kade and Lunara's journey is about to open in ways that will stay with you long after this story ends. Kade grew up on the south side of Miami, where loud streets and long nights shaped most kids fast. His father fixed cars in a small garage that barely stayed open. His mother worked long hours at a diner a few blocks away. They tried to give him a steady home, but the neighborhood carried its own weight. Kade watched people struggle. He watched people fight to survive. He learned early that life rarely offered comfort. He spent most afternoons helping his father in the garage, handing him tools, wiping grease off old engines, and listening to customers complain about bills they couldn't pay. His father always told him, "Keep your word." That's all a man has. Kade held onto that line more than he realized. School didn't interest him. The streets taught faster. Older boys tried to pull him into trouble, but he kept to himself. He moved like someone who saw too much, even as a kid. People noticed the quiet in him. They noticed the sharpness in his eyes. By the time he was 14, he understood what danger looked like. He understood what loss felt like. He understood what fear could do to a young heart. Kade wasn't born hard. The world around him made him that way. Kade was 15 when life changed in a way he never forgot. His father closed the garage early that evening. They planned to eat together, something they rarely had time for. Kade waited outside the shop while his father locked up, but a loud argument broke out across the street. Two men shouting, one pushing the other. Kade didn't think much of it at first. Fights were common in their neighborhood, but the noise rose fast. A car screeched. Someone yelled a warning. A stray shot broke the air. Kade dropped to the ground. When the shouting stopped, he looked up and saw his father on the concrete, hands pressed to his side, breath fading. Kade rushed to him, calling his name, but the words came out broken. His father's final grip on his arm shook him in a way he never spoke about. It was the first time Kade felt real fear, the kind that settles in your bones and stays. His mother held Kade tighter than ever in the days that followed, but grief sat between them like a weight. They stayed in the same home, but life no longer felt safe. Every street corner reminded him of what he had lost. Kade changed. He became quieter, more guarded, more alert. Loss didn't harden him overnight, but it planted something in him. A need to protect what little he had left. A need to never feel powerless again. That loss set him on a path he never planned for, one that shaped the man he would later become. Kade was 17 when betrayal taught him the second lesson that shaped his life. After his father passed, a man named Harlan stepped into their lives. He had been a long-time customer at the garage and often spoke to Kade's father with respect. He brought groceries when times were tight. He offered to check in on Kade and his mother. People in the neighborhood trusted him. Kade did too. Harlan promised to help Kade find work so he could support his mother. He invited him to run errands, meet people, and make connections. Kade believed he was learning business, learning survival, learning a way out of the struggle. What he didn't know was that Harlan used him. One night, Kade delivered a package for him, thinking it was harmless. Minutes later, police stormed the building. Kade ran. Harlan didn't. He turned Kade's name in without hesitation, claiming he had no idea the boy was involved. Kade sat in a small room at the station, stunned by the man who betrayed him to save himself. His mother cried when the officers questioned her. Kade kept his head down and stayed quiet. A neighbor eventually came forward and proved Kade wasn't involved, but the damage was done. He learned a truth that stayed with him forever. People say they care. People say they will protect you. But when pressure comes, some choose themselves. Harlan walked free. Kade walked away changed. He told himself he would never trust words without actions again. He would never give someone the power to break him so easily. He would never let betrayal go unpunished. That moment planted the rule he later built his empire, a rule that shaped his future, his relationships, and the fear people carried when they spoke his name. Kade stepped into adulthood with two truths carved into him. Loss taught him caution. Betrayal taught him distance. He didn't chase power. He chased stability. He worked long hours at a shipping dock, taking shifts others avoided. He watched everything, learned how goods moved, learned who controlled what, and learned where the real decisions were made. People respected how serious he was. He didn't talk much, but when he spoke, he gave clear answers. Managers saw that he handled pressure better than men twice his age. From the dock, he moved into logistics. From logistics, he moved into security. From security, he built relationships that opened doors most people never saw. His rise was steady, calculated, controlled. He avoided shortcuts. He avoided noise. He avoided people who moved without discipline. By his mid-20s, he became the person others trusted with high-stakes decisions. He kept operations smooth, and kept problems quiet. He learned how to read motives. He learned how to sense lies before they surfaced. His presence alone made people think twice before crossing a line. But the higher he climbed, the more he isolated himself. He didn't drink with the group. He didn't joke during breaks. He didn't let anyone close. People followed him because they believed in his structure. He followed his own rule because he believed no one else could protect what he built. There was no thrill in his world, no rush, only order, only silence, only control. The empire he gained didn't form from violence. It formed from discipline, long nights, and decisions made with a clear mind. But even surrounded by success, something was missing. He moved through life like a man who prepared for storms that never stopped. You said, ChatGPT said, Chapter 1, Part 5. The loneliness that never left him. Kade built a life people envied. Money, influence, a circle that listened when he spoke. From the outside, he looked like a man who had everything under control. But he carried a quiet emptiness he never talked about. Nights in his high-rise apartment felt silent in a way that pressed on his chest. He didn't allow guests. He didn't host gatherings. He didn't bring people close enough to see past the cold surface he showed the world. His phone rarely rang unless someone needed something. His meals were eaten alone. His victories felt dull without anyone to share them with. He told himself it was better this way. No trust meant no hurt. No closeness meant no betrayal. No heart meant no loss. But deep down, he knew the truth. He moved through life with controlled steps because he feared giving someone the power to break him again. He feared caring for the wrong person. He feared feeling helpless the way he did when he watched his father fade. He feared depending on someone who might walk away as Harlan did. People followed him, yet no one reached him. They stood near him, yet he kept a distance that could not be crossed. He stayed surrounded, but never connected. He stayed guarded, but never comforted. Kade lived in a world full of noise, but inside he carried a silence that never softened. A silence that was about to change. Because something unexpected was already walking toward his life. Someone gentle. Someone calm. Someone who would shift what he believed without trying. The type of presence that enters quietly but leaves nothing the same. Lunara Senn lived a quiet life in Brickell, tucked inside a small apartment on the 7th floor of an older building. The walls were thin, the elevators slow, and the windows carried the city's noise at night. But she liked it. It felt honest. It felt safe in a simple way she hadn't experienced in years. Her mornings started early. She woke before the sun, tied her hair back, brewed strong coffee, and reviewed her schedule for the day. Her apartment held little more than what she needed. A narrow bed. A small shelf of old romance novels she bought second-hand. A table she used for meals and late-night charting. A single plant she fought to keep alive. She didn't own much, but every item had a reason. Every corner carried a piece of her journey. Lunara worked long shifts as a night nurse at a private clinic. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't high-paying. But it was steady, and it let her help people, which mattered more to her than titles or money. She took the bus to work most days, sitting by the window and watching the city move past her in quick flashes. She wasn't the type to stand out in a room. She didn't dress to impress. She didn't chase attention. Her presence was subtle, almost quiet, but calming in a way people felt before they realized why. Her CO workers admired her patience. Her patients trusted her gentle hands. Strangers relaxed when she spoke to them. Lunara carried a light inside her, even though much of her life had been spent walking through shadows. It showed in how she greeted people, how she listened, and how she offered comfort without making anyone feel small. She moved through her days with purpose, even when she felt tired. She tried to stay focused on work, on healing, on staying kind in a world that tested kindness daily. Yet beneath her calm surface lived a history she worked hard to keep buried. A history that shaped her more than she wanted anyone to know. But all of that remained quiet, because at this stage in her life, Lunara lived on routine, stability, and soft strength. She had no idea her path was already moving towards someone who would change everything. Someone whose presence would challenge the walls she built. Someone whose life looked nothing like hers. Someone named Kade. Lunara learned how to be strong long before she learned how to be calm. In her early 20s, she loved someone she thought would stay. His name was Rylan, a man with warm smiles and sweet promises. He spoke about futures as if they were guaranteed. He talked about building a life with her, protecting her, and standing beside her. For a while, she believed him. They lived together in a small studio apartment. She studied for her nursing license while he worked different jobs. She supported him, encouraged him, carried more than her share because she thought loyalty meant patience. But pressure changes people. Rylan grew distant. He complained about her long hours and late nights. He questioned why she chose a career that left her tired most days. He didn't help with bills. He stopped trying to understand her dreams. The real break came the night Lunara came home early and heard him on the phone talking about how he needed someone easier, someone who would focus on him, instead of chasing a career. The words cut deeper than she expected. She didn't confront him. She didn't yell. She didn't cry in front of him. She packed her clothes the next morning and left without a fight. Rylan didn't chase her. He didn't call later to apologize. He let her walk away as if she were forgettable. That silence hurt more than his words. Lunara moved into her small brickle apartment soon after. She promised herself she would never lose her identity in someone else's needs again. She built a life that didn't depend on anyone. She finished her nursing program. She found work. She pushed her heart deep behind careful walls. She told herself she was okay alone, but she never forgot how it felt to give everything to someone who valued it so little. This past shaped how she treated people. It shaped how she loved. It shaped how she guarded her heart. It also shaped the hesitation she carried later, when a stranger with dark eyes and a guarded soul walked into her clinic. Someone whose presence stirred emotions she didn't expect to feel again. Someone who would challenge the promise she made to herself. Lunara's past could have made her cold, but it did the opposite. She learned that kindness mattered most when life felt heavy. She learned that people needed patience more than judgment. She learned that healing someone's pain sometimes started with something as simple as listening. At the clinic, she became the nurse everyone trusted during long nights. She stayed calm when others panicked. She offered steady words when fear rose in a patient's eyes. She spoke softly, never raising her voice, never rushing people through moments that scared them. Children reached for her hand. Older patients opened up to her, even when they refused to speak to anyone else. Family members relaxed the moment she stepped into the room. Lunara moved with purpose, but her touch carried warmth. She could take a person's pain and ease it without making them feel weak. She knew how to slow someone's breathing. She knew how to comfort without taking away their dignity. She knew how to balance care with quiet strength. Her CO workers often said she had a calming presence. They joked that she could settle storms without lifting a finger. She didn't think much of it. To her, helping people was simply what she was meant to do. Even outside the clinic, her kindness carried into everyday life. She gave up her seat on buses. She helped elderly neighbors carry groceries up the stairs. She checked on colleagues going through tough times. She stayed late when new nurses struggled. But despite her gentle heart, she never let anyone cross her boundaries again. Kindness did not mean access. Warmth did not mean trust. She knew the difference. This balance, soft heart, firm boundaries, made her different. It made her rare. And it was this exact nature that caught the attention of a man who never expected to be moved by anyone. A man who lived far from softness. A man who protected his world through fear and silence. A man who would soon realize that her light could reach places he never planned to expose. Lunara's nights followed a rhythm she knew by heart. She arrived at the clinic before her shift started, greeting the front desk staff with a soft smile. She changed into clean scrubs, tied her hair back, and slipped her ID badge into her pocket. Her steps were steady, her mind focused, her heart ready for whatever the night brought. She checked the charts first, vitals, notes, medication schedules. She memorized details quickly because she never liked relying on guesswork. Patients deserved more than that. The clinic halls stayed cool and quiet most nights, with soft footsteps echoing from room to room. Lunara moved through those halls like someone who belonged there, someone who brought comfort without effort. She adjusted blankets, refilled water cups, dimmed lights for restless patients, and offered calm reassurance during late-night worries. She didn't rush. She didn't cut corners. She treated every patient as if they mattered deeply. During her breaks, she sat in the small staff room with a cup of tea and an old book balanced on her knee. While others scrolled through their phones, she read stories about love, hope, healing, and resilience. Those stories reminded her that gentle moments still existed in a rough world. Her favorite part of the shift came near midnight, when the clinic grew quieter. She walked the halls slowly, checking each room with careful eyes, making sure her patients slept comfortably. She whispered to those who woke up panicked, adjusting pillows or holding their hand until the fear passed. Her routine grounded her. It gave her purpose. It kept her heart steady when old memories tried to rise. She didn't know that one night would break the rhythm, a night when a wounded man with a guarded expression stepped into her care, a night that shifted her quiet world without warning, a night that would become the beginning of something neither of them expected. Lunara had stitched cuts on countless hands, but none made her pause the way his did. It was near the end of her shift. She entered an exam room expecting a routine case, but when she looked up, she saw a man sitting on the table with a firm expression and an injury across his knuckles. He carried a presence that filled the room without effort. His posture was steady, his eyes sharp, and a silent guard stood outside the door. Lunara's heartbeat changed for a moment. Not out of fear, she didn't scare easily, but because something about him felt layered, hidden, controlled. She stepped forward calmly. "Let me take a look at your hand," she said, her voice steady. He held out his injured hand without a word. Most patients asked questions or tried to explain how they got hurt. He didn't. He watched her movements with a stillness that felt heavy but strangely peaceful. As she cleaned the wound, she noticed how tense his shoulders were. Not from pain, but from habit, like he was always ready for something to go wrong. She worked carefully, her touch light. The room stayed quiet except for the soft sound of her tools and his deep, controlled breaths. "You need to stop getting into fights," she said gently, trying to break the silence in a way that felt natural. He raised a brow, meeting her eyes for the first time. "Do you think I look for trouble?" His tone was low, steady, almost unreadable. Lunara didn't flinch. She didn't look away. "Trouble looks for people who don't run from it," she replied. His gaze lingered on her longer than she expected. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't cold. It felt curious. She sensed something beneath the surface, a weight he carried, a story behind his silence. But she didn't pry. It wasn't her place. When she finished, she wrapped his hand and handed him the care instructions. He took the paper, but he didn't leave. "You didn't ask what happened," he said quietly. "It's not my job to judge how someone got hurt," she answered. "My job is to help them heal." For the first time, she saw something shift in his eyes. A softness, a spark, a crack in the wall he kept around himself. Lunara didn't know why, but she felt something in that moment. Something she hadn't felt in a long time. Interest, curiosity, a slow warmth she didn't want to name yet. She walked out of the room with steady steps, but her mind stayed with him long after her shift ended. The tension between them wasn't loud. It wasn't rushed. It was quiet, subtle, and rooted in two people who recognized something familiar in each other, something beginning. 3 weeks passed before Lunara saw him again. It was close to midnight when the clinic doors opened, and he stepped inside, moving with quiet confidence. His injury was smaller this time, just a cut along his forearm, but the same silent guard trailed behind him. Lunara felt her pulse shift the moment she recognized him. He didn't look surprised to see her. If anything, he looked like he expected her. She guided him to the same exam room as before. The air felt different this time, not heavy, not tense. More like an unfinished moment waiting to continue. You again, she said gently, putting on gloves. His eyes lowered to her hands, then back to her face. You're the only one here who treats people without questions. I treat everyone the same way, she replied. No, he said, voice steady. You don't. Lunara paused for a second, struck by how deeply his words landed. He wasn't flirting. He wasn't trying to charm her. He spoke with simple honesty, as if he observed her more than she realized. She cleaned the cut with slow, careful movements. He didn't flinch. He didn't look away. He watched her, like she carried answers he didn't know he was searching for. You should be more careful, she said. So should you, he replied. The room grew quiet for a moment, not uncomfortable, just filled with something unspoken. When she finished wrapping his arm, he stood, but he didn't leave immediately. He held the door, glanced back at her, and said, Thank you, Lunara. Her name sounded different when he said it, lower, smoother, like he had been practicing it in his mind. That was their second encounter. A moment short in time, but heavy in meaning. Neither admitted it out loud, but both felt the shift. Something small had started. Something quiet, but strong enough to pull them closer. Kade walked out of the clinic, but Lunara stayed in his mind long after he reached the car. Most people changed their tone around him. They raised their voices or lowered them. They fidgeted. They avoided his eyes or tried too hard to impress him. Fear shaped how they spoke, how they moved, how they breathed near him. But Lunara didn't shift. She didn't shrink. She didn't push forward either. She looked at him with steady eyes, as if she saw a person, not a threat. It unsettled him, but in a way he didn't want to escape. Her calmness confused him. Her composure softened him. Her voice cut through the tension he carried like a shield. No one else made him feel that way. He tried to reason with himself as the car moved through the night. She was a nurse. She was trained to be steady. She treated everyone with care. But the truth pressed harder. She affected him. He didn't like depending on anyone, not even for a moment of peace. He didn't like the idea of someone reaching through the defenses he had built over the years of loss. Yet her presence lingered in him like a reminder of something he didn't let himself feel anymore. Strength recognized strength, but hers was different. Quiet, warm, unforced. It took him off guard, and though he tried to ignore it, he couldn't deny it. He found himself thinking about her hands as she cleaned his wound, thinking about the softness in her voice, thinking about how she stayed calm even when she stood inches from a man most people feared. Kade had faced dangerous men without blinking, but one gentle woman made him pause. That realization stayed with him, settling deeper than he wanted to admit. Their conversations always started simple, almost ordinary, yet each one lingered long after it ended. The next time Kade visited the clinic, he arrived late in the shift with a sprain he claimed wasn't serious. Lunara guided him to a chair and began examining his wrist. You don't rest enough, she said. I rest when I need to, he replied. That's not what your body says. He gave a faint, amused breath. Do you talk to all your patients like this? Only the stubborn ones. He watched her closely. So, that's what I am. Very, she said without hesitation. He didn't argue. She didn't look away. Their exchanges were brief, but each one revealed small truths neither meant to share. One night she asked, Do you ever take a day off? His answer came after a pause. No. Why? There's always something to handle. Life can't be all responsibility, Kade. He studied her like she spoke a language he hadn't heard before. Some of us don't get the choice. She understood more than he realized. So, you carry it alone, she said softly. His jaw tensed. He wasn't used to being read so easily. Another time, as she adjusted a bandage, she asked, Do you have people you trust? A few. That's enough? She asked. It has to be. She didn't push. She never pushed. But her questions made him think, sometimes for hours after leaving the clinic. He wasn't a man of long conversations, but with her, silence didn't feel harsh. She made space without forcing him to fill it. These small exchanges created a thread between them, subtle but real, a growing familiarity neither tried to break. Every time they spoke, something warmed inside both of them. A slow current, a quiet pull, a connection taking shape without noise or effort. It wasn't loud, it wasn't rushed. It was the start of something neither could ignore. Kade was a man who rarely wondered about people. He assessed them, measured them, placed them where they belonged in his world. That was it. But Lunara disrupted that pattern. After each visit, he found himself thinking about her during late meetings or quiet nights. He replayed their conversations. He remembered the steadiness in her tone, the way she focused on her work, the way she didn't look at him with fear or need. She wasn't impressed by him. She wasn't intimidated either. She treated him like someone with a bruised wrist or a torn skin layer. Nothing more, nothing less. That balance drew him in. He wanted to understand how someone who carried her own pain could still offer comfort so easily. He wanted to know why her presence quieted parts of him he didn't show anyone. He wanted to know why he trusted her hands near his wounds, more than he trusted most people near his life. He didn't chase people, but he caught himself wanting to see her again. He noticed details he shouldn't have, the soft twist in her hair, the way she tucked a loose strand behind her ear when she concentrated, the calm rhythm of her breathing when she worked. He wasn't trying to fall into interest. It slipped in anyway. During one late appointment, after she finished cleaning a bruise, he asked her a question he had never asked anyone. "Do you work every night?" She glanced up, surprised he cared. "Most nights, yes." "Why?" "I like helping people through the harder hours. Nights feel heavier for most." Her answer stayed with him. She lived in a world of healing. He lived in a world of control. Yet both lived awake through the same dark hours. That awareness connected them in a way neither expected. Kade didn't understand the feeling yet. He only knew one thing. He wanted to learn more about the woman who made him feel steady in a way nothing else did. Interest had already taken root. Kade had always been a man who observed others without letting them observe him. He read motives. He predicted reactions. He stayed 2 steps ahead of everyone. But with Lunara, he found himself studying things he never paid attention to. The way her voice softened when she gave instructions, the quiet confidence in her steps when she walked into a room, the way she focused fully on whoever needed her, even if it was a stranger, the subtle sadness in her smile when she thought no one noticed. These small details stayed with him long after he left the clinic. He told himself he was only curious, nothing more. Curiosity was harmless, but interest grew silently. It grew each time he replayed their conversations in his mind. It grew when he remembered how her eyes met his without fear. It grew when he realized she treated him like a man instead of a figure people whispered about. He found excuses to pass by the clinic on nights he didn't need medical attention. He told his driver to take longer routes that passed through the block. He checked the glowing windows to see if she was on shift. He never went inside, but seeing the lights warmed something in him. Interest deepened the night he overheard her calming a frightened patient. Her voice carried steady reassurance, filled with patience that felt foreign in his world. She spoke to the patient with a level of care that made Kade stand still for a moment. It made him wonder what it would feel like if she ever used that same tone with him, not as a nurse, but as someone who cared. The thought surprised him. He wasn't the type to want softness. He built a life that didn't require it. But Lunara made him question things he had accepted for years. She stirred something he couldn't push away, no matter how hard he tried. He wanted to know more about her, not her job, not the facts on her badge. He wanted to know the person behind the calm exterior. Interest had taken root, quiet but firm, and for the first time in a long time, Kade didn't fight it. Lunara felt the pull between them too, but she carried it with caution. She noticed how his eyes softened when she spoke, how he listened with a focus most people never showed her, how he stayed calm in her presence, even on nights when he walked in tense and guarded. She felt something forming, but she didn't rush it. Her past taught her that opening her heart too fast could cost her more than she could recover from. so she kept her steps careful. Kade sensed her hesitation. He didn't press. He didn't demand answers or ask for more time than she offered. He matched her pace, quiet, respectful, patient in his own way. Their chemistry grew through small moments. When she handed him a fresh bandage and their fingers brushed, the warmth lingered longer than it should have. When they made brief eye contact, neither looked away first. When she asked if his injury hurt, he answered with more honesty than he shared with anyone else. He felt grounded by her presence. She felt seen when he spoke to her. There were no grand gestures, no declarations, no dramatic lines. The connection formed through stillness, through soft looks, through slow trust. She noticed how he waited for her to finish her sentence before responding. He noticed how she remembered details he never expected her to keep. She noticed how he relaxed around her, tension melting from his shoulders. He noticed how she stood closer each time without realizing it. It was gentle, this thing between them. Quiet, yet strong enough to shift something deep inside both of them. Lunara didn't know what would come next, and neither did he, but both felt the same truth growing inside them. Something was starting, something they couldn't ignore, something meant to pull their worlds together, no matter how far apart those worlds seemed. Lunara wasn't supposed to take that route home. She switched shifts with a colleague earlier that evening, and by the time she stepped out of the clinic, the buses were delayed. She chose to walk, hoping the quiet air would help her unwind after a long night. The streets near the marina were usually calm at that hour. Boats rocked gently against the dock, and the water reflected the faint city lights. She pulled her jacket tighter around her body and walked with steady steps, clutching her bag against her side. Her mind replayed patient conversations, the charts she completed, the kind words from a coworker. She didn't notice the two men trailing her until she turned down a narrow sidewalk leading toward her apartment. She sensed footsteps behind her, slow at first, then faster, closer. She picked up her pace. Her breathing changed. The cold air stung her skin. Just as she reached the street corner, a rough hand grabbed her wrist, pulling her backward. Her bag slipped from her grasp, hitting the ground with a soft thud. Her heart slammed against her ribs as fear shot through her entire body. "What do you have in the bag?" one man demanded. I don't have anything you want," she whispered, trying to stay calm. Her voice shook. Her hands trembled. Her knees felt weak. The second man searched her bag while the first held her tight. She tried to look away, tried not to show how frightened she was, but the fear built in her chest faster than she could control it. "You saw something you shouldn't have," the man snarled. "I didn't see anything," she whispered again, breath uneven. Her mind raced through every possibility: robbery, assault, something worse. She forced herself to breathe, but terror wrapped around her like ice. She looked around for help, but the street was empty. The man yanked her closer. Pain shot up her arm. Her voice caught in her throat. She felt helpless in a way she hadn't felt since the day Rylan broke her trust. Fear took over. Tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them back, refusing to collapse. She opened her mouth to plead, but before she could speak, she heard steady footsteps approaching from the shadows near the dock. The grip on her wrist tightened. "Who's there?" one man called. Lunara's heart pounded, uncertain whether the incoming presence meant more danger or a chance at safety. But she would soon find out. This moment, the moment she feared she might not escape, was the beginning of a shift she never saw coming. Lunara tried to pull her wrist free, but the man's grip stayed tight. Her breath broke in short bursts as fear spread through her body. She didn't know what they wanted. She didn't know if they were after her bag, or her, or something she didn't understand. Her voice wouldn't rise above a whisper. Her throat felt tight. Her legs wobbled beneath her. "Let me go," she managed, but it came out soft, almost unheard. The man holding her leaned close. His tone carried irritation. "You saw something. Don't lie." "I didn't," she said, shaking her head. "I swear, I didn't." Her eyes darted around, searching for anyone who might help, but the street felt empty. The chill in the air made her teeth clench. Her fingers went numb from the pressure on her wrist. Her thoughts ran wild. What if they dragged her somewhere? What if no one heard her? What if this was how her night ended? Fear sank deep, faster than she could fight it. She felt small. She felt alone. She felt the panic rising inside her chest, pressing against her lungs. The second man stepped closer, lifting her bag as if he expected to find something inside it that explained their anger. When he found nothing, frustration flashed across his face. "She's lying," he snapped. "I'm not," Lunara whispered. "Please, I don't want trouble." Her voice broke mid-sentence. She hated how fragile she sounded, but her body wouldn't respond the way she wanted. The first man jerked her wrist again. A sharp pain shot up her arm. She gasped, trying to steady her breath. But it felt like the world was closing in. Her mind replayed every warning she'd ever heard about walking alone at night. She wished she had waited for the bus. She wished she had taken the longer route. She wished she had stayed inside for another minute. Fear brought tears to her eyes, blurring her vision. She blinked hard, fighting to stay upright. The men argued with each other, but Lunara barely heard them. Her heartbeat drowned out their voices, pounding so loud she could feel it in her ears. She was terrified, more than she wanted to admit, and right when her strength started to slip, she heard a voice she recognized. A voice she didn't expect. A voice that steadied something inside her even before she turned her head. Everything inside her froze. Help had arrived, though she didn't know it yet. Let her go. The voice came from behind them, low, steady, controlled. Lunara's breath hitched. She didn't need to look to know who it was. Kade stepped forward, his steps calm, his presence unmistakable. His men appeared behind him, moving like shadows, but it was Kade who caught everyone's attention. The man gripping her wrist turned, his expression shifting the moment he saw who stood before him. His hold loosened just slightly, but not enough to free her. Kade's eyes dropped to her wrist, then rose back to the attacker. He didn't shout. He didn't rush. His silence alone carried more weight than a threat. "I said, let her go," he repeated. This time, the man obeyed. Her wrist slipped free. Lunara stepped back immediately, pressing a hand to her chest as she tried to steady her breathing. Kade moved in front of her without hesitation, placing himself between her and the danger. His stance shifted in a way that told the men he wouldn't ask a third time. "What do you want with her?" he asked. One of the men stuttered. "We thought she saw something. We made a mistake." "You did," Kade replied. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The two men exchanged terrified glances before backing away, hands raised slightly. They turned, stumbling over each other as they hurried down the street. Kade didn't watch them leave. He turned to Lunara instead. Her breathing was shaky. Her hands trembled. Fear still clung to her like cold air. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You're safe now." She swallowed hard, eyes fixed on his. "Why are you here?" she whispered, her voice still uneven. "To make sure you got home," he said. "You weren't supposed to walk alone tonight." She blinked, confused. "How did you—" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. One of his men kept his distance, waiting for Kade's signal. The street felt different now, no longer threatening. Kade reached for her hand gently, checking the red marks on her skin. His touch was careful, slow, steady. Lunara felt her heartbeat begin to settle. "You shouldn't have been alone," he said again, softer this time. Lunara didn't respond. She couldn't. Her body was still coming down from the fear that gripped her minutes ago. But she felt something she never expected to feel in that moment. Safe. Kade didn't rush her. He didn't ask her to explain. He didn't overwhelm her with questions. He simply stood there, giving her space to breathe. "Look at me," he said softly. Lunara lifted her eyes. The moment their gazes locked, her body reacted before her mind did. Her breathing slowed, her shoulders loosened, and the fear gripping her chest began to ease. Kade stepped a little closer, making sure she could lean on him if she needed to. "Breathe with me," he said, keeping his voice calm. She tried. Her breath Hitched. He waited. In through your nose. He guided gently, slow, steady. She followed the rhythm of his voice. Her heartbeat softened, her muscles relaxed. He watched every change in her expression, reading her the same way he read danger. But with her, he responded differently. His eyes weren't sharp. They were warm, anchored, almost protective. "You're safe," he repeated. "No one is going to touch you again. Not while I'm here." A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't mean for it to fall. She wiped it quickly, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. He shook his head. "Don't apologize. You were scared. Anyone would be..." But she knew that wasn't true. Not anyone. Not him. "I hate feeling like this," she admitted, voice low. "You're allowed to feel," he said. "You didn't do anything wrong." The softness in his tone caught her off guard. She never expected a man with his presence to speak with such quiet care. Something in her chest tightened. Not fear, not anxiety, something warmer. He reached out, touching her chin lightly to lift her face. "You can lean on someone," he said. "You don't always have to hold the weight alone." His words hit her deeper than she expected. For a moment, the world felt still. Just her and him. Her fear melting slowly under his steady attention. "Come on," he said, lowering his hand but keeping close. "Let me take you home." She nodded, trusting him without question, something she didn't do often. As they walked, he kept a measured pace beside her, close enough to make her feel protected, but far enough not to overwhelm her. Neither spoke much, but the silence between them felt different now. Connected, gentle, alive with unspoken emotion. By the time they reached her building, her breathing had returned to normal, but her heart carried a new level of awareness. He had seen her at her most vulnerable, and instead of pulling away, he had stayed. That changed something inside her, and inside him. Kade waited at the entrance of her building until he saw her reach the lobby safely. She turned back once, meeting his eyes through the glass doors. The soft gratitude on her face stayed with him longer than it should have. When the doors closed behind her, he didn't move right away. He stood on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, replaying the fear in her voice, the tremble. In her hands, the way she tried to stay strong, even when her body betrayed her. Something about it struck him deeper than he expected. His driver opened the door, waiting for him to get inside. Kade didn't. "Give me a minute," he said quietly. He glanced back at the street where those men cornered her. His jaw tightened. His chest burned with a mix of anger and something he didn't want to name. Protecting his territory was one thing. Protecting her felt different. He didn't want to admit it. Not even to himself. But her safety had become personal. He finally entered the car, but the entire drive felt strange. He wasn't thinking about work. He wasn't reviewing plans. He wasn't analyzing threats. He was thinking about her. The way she looked at him with shaken eyes. The way she let him guide her breathing. The way she held on to her strength even when she was terrified. The way her voice softened when she whispered his name as he walked her home. His world didn't allow softness, but she carried it, and it reached him in a way he didn't expect. When he reached his apartment, he didn't turn on the lights. He stood in the dark, staring out at the city. The night felt heavier than usual, not because of danger, but because of the realization settling into him. He cared, more than he meant to, more than he was ready for. And somewhere between the fear in her eyes and the trust in her steps, he understood something he couldn't ignore. Lunara mattered now, not as a passing moment, not as someone he helped, but as someone he wanted to protect, even from things she didn't see. This thought stayed with him long after he tried to push it away, long after he tried to return to his routine, long after he sat alone in his apartment, with nothing but silence around him. For the first time in a long time, another person filled his mind instead of responsibility, and that shift was only the beginning. Kade tried to return to his normal routine the next day, but nothing felt normal. He buried himself in work, reviewing contracts and security reports with the same focus he was known for. His office stayed quiet, his employees moved with their usual discipline, and every detail of his empire ran the way he demanded. But his mind kept drifting back to her. He reminded himself that caring created weakness. He reminded himself that he didn't let people in. He reminded himself that feelings had no place in his world. So he pulled back. He forced himself to keep distance between them. For 2 nights, he avoided passing by the clinic. He told his driver to take different routes. He ignored the impulse to check if she was safe after her shift. He tried to convince himself that what happened near the marina was a one-time event. But distance didn't silence her memory. Her voice still echoed in the back of his mind. Her trembling hand still lingered in his thoughts. The way she trusted him in her weakest moment still struck something in him he wasn't prepared to face. He told himself he shouldn't get involved. His world wasn't meant for someone like her, someone gentle, someone steady, someone who saw people as human, not tools or threats. Every reason he listed sounded logical, but none of them worked. Because when he closed his eyes at night, he saw her face as she looked up at him on the street. He felt the way her fingers trembled when he held her wrist. He heard the soft break in her voice when she whispered his name. Those moments repeated, like they had been carved into him. Kade was a man who controlled his environment down to the last detail. But no amount of control stopped the shift happening inside him. He tried to push it away, tried to return to the cold silence he once lived in, tried to remind himself that distance kept people safe. But distance didn't feel like safety anymore. It felt like denial. Lunara returned to work after the attack, pretending everything was the same. She told herself she only needed rest. That fear faded with time, that her routine would steady her again. But she couldn't stop thinking about him. Kade's voice still lingered in her mind. The way he stood in front of her, the way he guided her breathing, the way his presence gave her strength when she had none left. She kept replaying the moment he touched her wrist, the warmth of his hand, the way. He looked at her with a softness she never expected from someone with his power. Each memory pulled at her in quiet ways she didn't want to acknowledge. She tried to focus on her patients, giving them the calm attention she always offered. But her heart tightened whenever she walked past the exam room where she first patched him up. She wondered whether she would see him again. She wondered if he was avoiding her. She wondered why that thought hurt more than it should. Her co-workers noticed she seemed distracted. "You okay?" one asked. "Yeah," Lunara replied with a small smile. "Just tired." It wasn't tiredness. It was something else. Something deeper. Something she didn't want to name. She cared. The realization scared her. She remembered what caring once cost her. She remembered how quickly trust could break. She remembered how easily a gentle heart could be taken for granted. She tried to convince herself that whatever she felt toward Kade was temporary. A reaction to fear. A reaction to gratitude. A moment she would forget soon. But she didn't forget. Every time she walked home, she remembered how it felt to have someone beside her. Someone who didn't judge her fear. Someone who stayed until she reached safety. Someone who made her feel seen. Her heart kept drifting toward him, even when she tried to pull it back. Her mind kept circling the same thought. Kade wasn't like anyone she'd known. Not soft, but steady. Not loud, but present. Not cold, but guarded. Lunara placed her hands on the counter of the clinic one night and whispered to herself, "Don't fall too fast." But deep down, she already knew she was slipping. And no matter how much she tried to ignore it, the truth was clear. Her feelings were growing. Slowly, quietly, unmistakably. Lunara wasn't expecting to see him again so soon. But 3 nights after the attack, Kade appeared at the clinic doors, with no injury, no appointment, nothing to explain why he was there. He simply said, "You looked tired last time. I thought you might need this," and handed her a warm cup of coffee. She froze for a second, surprised. No man had ever shown up for her in such a simple, thoughtful way. "Thank you," she whispered, fingers brushing his as she took the cup. That one touch sent a gentle warmth through her chest. He felt it too. She could see it in the small shift of his eyes, but neither commented on it. From that night on, small moments began to build between them. Shared coffee. Sometimes he brought her one. Sometimes she made an extra for him. Each cup felt like an excuse to see each other again, even if neither said it. They would stand by the clinic doors during her break, the warm cups between their hands, the cool night air settling around them. "You're too dedicated," he said one night. "You say that like it's a flaw," she replied. "It's not," he said. "It's rare." Brief touches. Their hands brushed when she passed him a napkin, when he opened a door for her, when she adjusted the sleeve of his jacket absent-mindedly. Each touch lasted less than a second, but left an imprint that stayed longer than either expected. Quiet walks. Some nights he walked her home. He didn't stay close, but he stayed near. Their footsteps fell into the same rhythm without planning it. They didn't talk much during these walks. Yet the silence felt full, not empty. Comfortable. Safe. "One night," she whispered, "You don't have to walk me." "I know," he said. "I want to." She looked at him then, really looked, and saw the truth he rarely allowed anyone to see. He cared. Personal stories. Little by little, pieces of their lives slipped out. She told him about her childhood dreams of becoming a nurse. He told her about fixing cars with his father. She told him she loved old romance books. He admitted he didn't read anything unless he had to. She told him she hated cooking but loved pastries. He confessed he ate the same breakfast every day because change felt distracting. None of these moments were planned. None were dramatic. But each one softened the space between them. Kade found himself opening up to her in ways he didn't expect. Lunara found herself trusting him in ways she hadn't trusted anyone in years. The romance grew slowly, gently, in the space between shared sips of coffee, small touches, and quiet conversations. It wasn't forced. It wasn't loud. It was natural, a warmth that settled before they realized what it meant. Intimacy between them did not arrive loudly. It slipped in through small moments, neither planned but both felt. It began one evening when Lunara stepped out of the clinic after a long shift and found Kade leaning against a black SUV across the street. He didn't call her name. He didn't wave. He just waited, hands in his pockets, eyes steady on her. "You don't have to walk alone," he said simply. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. They walked side by side down the quiet sidewalk, moving at the same pace without speaking. The silence wasn't awkward. It felt warm, like the kind that comes when two people understand each other more than they admit. Halfway to her apartment, Lunara brushed her hand against his by accident. Kade didn't move away. She didn't either. The next time they met, he brought her a cup of iced coffee, the exact kind she always ordered but never mentioned to him. When she asked how he knew, he shrugged lightly. "You look at the same menu every time," he said. It wasn't meant to be sweet, but it was. It told her he paid attention. Another evening, as they walked along the waterfront, she told him a quiet story about her childhood, the books she used to hide under her pillow, the long nights she spent imagining better days, the way she used to dream of helping people before she even knew what nursing was. Kade listened the entire time without interrupting, his eyes on her more than the water. When she finished, he said, "That explains why you calm people the way you do." The words landed softly, warming her chest. Later, he shared something too, not the dark parts of his past, not the details of his world, but something simple. "I don't sleep much," he admitted. She looked at him. "Why?" He paused before answering. "The quiet makes things louder." She understood exactly what he meant without needing an explanation. Their connection grew through moments like that. Soft comments, shared steps, quiet understanding. Their hands brushed again one night, but this time Kade turned his palm slightly, giving her the chance to link her fingers with his. She didn't, not yet, but she didn't pull away either. The closeness grew slowly, like two people learning each other's rhythm without speaking it out loud. Their intimacy didn't rely on touch. It lived in their pacing, their shared silence, their willingness to be close. It felt natural, undeniable, safe. It was the kind of intimacy that didn't need to be taught. only felt, and both of them felt it. Before we move forward, let me speak directly to you for a moment. You have seen how someone gentle entered the life of a man who never expected to feel anything again. You have watched how slow trust, quiet steps, and simple moments began to shift a guarded heart. Now I want to hear from you. If someone changed your heart the way Lunara changed Kade's, what would you do? Would you let them in? Would you protect the connection? Would you trust the feeling or step back out of fear? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your words help this story reach more viewers who love meaningful stories and life lessons. If you are enjoying this journey with Kade and Lunara, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the Lord of Hearts family. Your support keeps these stories alive. Now, let's continue. Kade's empire stretched across Miami in ways most people never saw. It wasn't loud. It wasn't messy. It moved with order, built on systems he perfected over years. Shipping lines ran on schedules he created. Security teams operated under strict rules he enforced himself. Neighborhood deals, private contracts, protected routes. All of it worked because of one foundation: loyalty. Every person who worked under him knew the standards. Show up, stay honest, keep your word. Protect the system that protected you. Kade rewarded loyalty more than anything else. He paid his people well. He protected their families. He gave second chances when they were earned, but never a third. His world functioned because everyone knew their place and respected the structure that kept everything stable. His top men had been with him for years. They trusted his judgment, relied on his consistency, and followed his orders without hesitation. They knew he kept dangers away from them. They knew he carried losses so they didn't have to. In return, they stayed loyal out of both respect and fear. Kade wasn't reckless. He wasn't careless. He didn't rule through chaos. He ruled through clarity. You knew where you stood with him. You knew what he expected. You knew what happened when someone crossed a line. People outside his circle whispered about him, but those inside followed him because his empire gave them security. He built a world where loyalty wasn't a choice, it was survival. This throne of his wasn't gold or luxury. It was influence held steady by trust, consistency, and consequences. And everyone understood that one broken link could bring trouble to the entire chain. That was why his rule mattered. That was why everyone respected it. And that was why any shift in his behavior would be noticed immediately. Betrayal shaped Kade more than any victory he ever earned. It began with Harlan, the man who pretended to guide him, who smiled at his family, who spoke about loyalty while planning to save himself at Kade's expense. Kade never forgot sitting in that small police room, watching officers question his mother, while the man he trusted walked away without a trace of guilt. That moment rooted something permanent in him. People could pretend to care. People could act loyal when life was easy. But the truth showed itself when pressure came. As he grew older and took on more responsibility, he saw betrayal repeat itself in different forms. Partners lied to gain control. Associates hid money to build their own power. Men who claimed to be brothers worked with rivals when it suited them. Every betrayal left a mark. Every mark reinforced his rule. Loyalty was not optional. It was the spine of his world. Break it, and everything cracked. Kade learned that danger rarely came from strangers. It came from the ones who stood closest, the ones who pretended to protect you, the ones who smiled until you turned your back. This history carved his approach to leadership. He didn't forgive when someone broke trust. He didn't negotiate. He didn't give chances to people who proved they didn't value his structure. Because trust wasn't soft for him, it was survival. And betrayal was the one act he couldn't allow without consequence. It wasn't cruelty, it was protection. For his empire, his men, his future, and what little peace he had built after a lifetime of loss. This wound shaped every decision he made. It shaped the way he looked at people. It shaped the way he guarded himself. Which was why Lunara's presence and the shift she created did not go unnoticed. Kade's men respected structure, and they respected the man who enforced it. They followed his rules because they knew he was steady, predictable, in the ways that mattered. and strict when someone crossed a line. His decisions rarely wavered, until Lunara. It started with the night he spared her attackers. His inner circle saw it. They didn't speak on it, but the shift echoed through the room like a quiet alarm. Kade never walked away from betrayal. He never paused when someone tested his boundary. But for her, he changed the outcome. Some of his men saw it as softness. Others saw it as a distraction. A few saw it as danger. Because a man who breaks his own rule for someone else becomes harder to predict, and less predictable meant less secure. They watched how he checked on her without being asked. How he altered his route just to pass by the clinic. How his tone softened slightly when her name was mentioned. How he stayed distant, yet still drawn to her. None of this matched the Kade they knew. Men who operated in high-risk spaces didn't fear many things, but they feared uncertainty. And Lunara introduced uncertainty into a structure that depended on consistency. They whispered among themselves when he wasn't near. She's changing him. He lets things slide now. What if she becomes a weakness someone uses against him? Their fear wasn't about Lunara as a person. It was about what she represented. A soft spot in a hardened world. A point of influence no one else held. A door to Kade's emotions. Something they had never seen open before. If someone reached that door, they could hurt him. And if someone hurt him, his whole empire could tremble. His men didn't say this to his face, but they carried the worry in every step they took. Every whisper behind closed doors. Every glance when Lunara's name came up. They feared she could change him. Not because she was a threat, but because she mattered. And for a man like Kade, that was enough to shift the balance of everything. The unease surrounding Lunara did not fade. It grew. Kade's top men, Rax, Joran and Teal, monitored everything that moved through the Empire. They knew patterns, routines, risks and behaviors better than anyone else. They had watched Kade for years, seen him make hard choices without hesitation, seen him cut ties the moment trust broke. But now they noticed pauses that didn't exist before her. A meeting would end, and instead of reviewing follow-up plans, Kade would check his phone for updates on her shift. A security concern would be raised, and he would dismiss it faster than usual because his mind drifted elsewhere. A minor conflict between two teams would sit unresolved for hours, something he never allowed because he had been thinking about Lunara's safety instead of operations. Rax brought it up first. He didn't question Kade directly. No one dared. But he spoke to Joran in private. He's different, Rax said. Not weaker, but distracted. Joran nodded slowly. He's watching her too closely. If someone sees it, they'll use it. TL, who rarely spoke in these discussions, stepped forward. What if someone already noticed? That thought settled like weight in the room. Because in their world, information didn't travel, it spread. And whispers about their leader changing could reach ears that shouldn't hear them. The tension grew each time Kade made an unusual choice. Each time he spared someone longer than expected. Each time he ordered extra guards near the clinic. Each time Lunara's name caused the slightest shift in his tone. His inner circle stayed loyal, but loyalty came with responsibility. To watch, to predict, to identify threats before they surfaced. And right now, the only unpredictable element in Kade's life was connected to a woman who had no idea how much danger surrounded him. They worried not because she was harmful, but because her influence opened a new vulnerability. If someone wanted to hurt Kade, they knew exactly where to aim. The tension wasn't loud. It lived in exchanged glances, quiet concerns, and long silences during meetings. They all felt it. They all sensed something was coming, and they were right, because someone was already watching, waiting for the perfect moment to test how far Kade would bend for her. Tension had been rising quietly, but by the end of the week, it took a sharper turn. Word reached Kade that a small but ambitious group along the port routes had started asking questions. They weren't asking about shipments, security routes, or the usual money matters. They were asking about him. More specifically, about who mattered to him. It started with comments overheard in a warehouse, then a question posed to one of his guards, then a stranger lingering outside the clinic longer than necessary. Each sign seemed small on its own. Together, they formed a pattern Kade recognized immediately. Someone was probing for weakness. One evening, Rax stepped into Kade's office with a report in hand. "They're monitoring the clinic," he said quietly. "2 men on rotation." "Not ours." Kade looked up slowly, eyes sharpening. "Why the clinic?" Rax hesitated before replying. "They think she matters." Silence filled the room. Heavy, focused. Kade set the report down, his jaw tightening with a controlled calm that always appeared before he made serious decisions. His rule had kept his empire steady for years, but now that rule was being measured against something new, someone new. Someone who had no idea forces outside her control were closing in. Joran added from the corner, "They're testing how far you'll go to protect her." Teal's voice followed, low and steady. "And how far you'll bend your rule." Kade didn't respond immediately. He stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the city lights. His reflection stared back, the man he built himself to be. A man who didn't allow cracks in his world. But Lunara had opened one, not through violence, not through manipulation, through care. And now, someone intended to use that shift to provoke him. He exhaled once, slow and controlled. "Increase security around the clinic," he said. "Double surveillance on the port routes, and find out who's asking questions." Rax nodded, but his eyes stayed serious. "They're not just testing the Empire, Kade. They're testing you." For the first time, Kade didn't deny it, because deep inside, he knew the truth. This wasn't about business. It wasn't about control. It wasn't about territory. This was personal. Someone wanted to see whether the feared ruler would protect a woman who didn't belong to his world. Someone wanted to see whether Lunara was his new line. And Kade knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whoever pushed this boundary would regret discovering how far his protection reached. This shift, subtle but unmistakable, marked the beginning of a challenge that would change everything for him and for her. The clinic was quiet that night, quieter than usual. Most staff had gone home, and Lunara stayed behind to finish charting. She liked the silence at the end of a long shift. It gave her space to breathe, to reset, to settle her thoughts. She was packing her bag when she heard a soft knock on the back door, hesitant, uneven. She froze. No one used that entrance unless it was an emergency. She walked toward it carefully, listening. When she pressed her ear to the door, she heard a strained breath, then a weak voice. "Please, help." Lunara hesitated for a second, but her training took over. She unlocked the door and pulled it open. A man stumbled inside, gripping his side. Blood soaked through his shirt. His face was pale, sweat dripping down his forehead. He leaned against the wall, panting. I need a doctor," he said. "You have one," Lunara replied, guiding him toward an exam table. "Sit. I'll help you." He winced in pain as she examined the wound. It wasn't a simple cut. It looked like a deep slash, the kind that came from a fight, not an accident. "What happened to you?" she asked gently. The man avoided her eyes. Wrong place. Wrong people. She didn't press him. She didn't judge him. She focused on stopping the bleeding. Her hands moved quickly. Gloves, antiseptic, gauze. She cleaned the wound and checked his pulse. He looked anxious, constantly glancing at the door. "No one's coming in," she assured softly. She didn't know where he came from. She didn't know what trouble he was involved in. She didn't know who might be chasing him. All she saw was a hurt man who needed care. That was enough. The stranger watched her work with a mix of pain and relief. "You didn't have to open the door," he muttered. "Yes, I did," she answered. "You needed help." Her tone was simple. Her compassion came naturally. She didn't stop to wonder if this choice carried consequences. She stitched the wound, wrapped the bandage, and handed him water. For a moment, he seemed calmer, breathing slowly again. "You saved me," he whispered. Lunara gave a small smile. "Just stay still a little longer. You lost a lot of blood." She didn't realize she had just stepped into the center of a storm she couldn't see. And she didn't know who this man truly was. or how close he stood to the line Kade never allowed anyone to cross. Lunara moved around the room with quiet focus, preparing a second set of supplies in case the stranger needed more help. She kept her tone calm, hoping it would steady him. "You're safe here," she said. "No one will disturb you." The man watched her with tired eyes. "Why are you helping me?" She didn't look up as she checked the bandage. "Because you're hurt." "That's it?" he asked, almost surprised. "That's enough." Her words were simple, but they held truth. She cared because someone needed care. She didn't need a story to justify it. She didn't need assurances or promises. This was who she was. She handed him a cup of water. He drank slowly, wincing. "You should lie down," she advised. "Your pulse is weak." The man lowered himself onto the exam bed, still studying her. "You don't know what kind of mess I'm in. You don't have to tell me. If I stay here, I might bring danger to your door." Lunara paused, a quiet breath catching in her chest. She understood risks. She understood fear. But she didn't step back. "You're bleeding and exhausted," she said. "Let me get you stable first. Whatever comes after, we'll handle it." Her kindness wasn't dramatic. It was steady, instinctive, honest. She didn't fear him. She feared failing someone in need. But the truth she didn't know, couldn't know, was that this man wasn't just injured. He belonged to the same group, testing Kade's boundaries. He was part of the growing tension around the port routes. Worse, he wasn't supposed to survive tonight. If Kade's team had found him first, this story would have ended differently. Lunara didn't see danger. She saw a patient, and the gentleness she offered him, the protection she gave, the safety she provided. These choices, made from a good heart, unknowingly stepped across the one line Kade never allowed anyone to cross. She had broken his rule without meaning to, without realizing it, and with every minute that passed, the danger she was helping walked closer to Kade's world. Kade was already on edge that night. Surveillance showed unusual movement near the docks, and a flagged alert reported someone injured running through the area. The last known direction pointed toward the clinic. His clinic, her clinic. He didn't hesitate. He ordered his driver to stop 2 streets away and continued on foot, with 2 guards trailing behind at a distance. His steps were quick, controlled, but inside, tension tightened his chest. When he reached the back entrance, he noticed the door was slightly open. His eyes narrowed. He pushed it wider and stepped inside. What he saw made every muscle in his body go still. Lunara stood over the exam table, wrapping a fresh bandage around the wounded man's torso. Her hands were steady. Her breath was calm. She had no idea that the person she was helping was part of the group provoking trouble along Kade's routes. The man looked up and froze when he saw Kade. Color drained from his face. Lunara turned at the same moment, startled. "Kade." Her voice held confusion, then worry. Kade didn't speak right away. He scanned the scene, the blood, her gloves, the trembling stranger, the exposed wound. His men stepped inside behind him, their expressions turning cold as they recognized the injured man. Rax muttered under his breath, "He's one of them." Joran tense. "We should have finished him tonight." The stranger tried to sit up but winced. "I'm not here to start anything. I needed help." "You came to the wrong place," Rax snapped. Lunara stepped between the stranger and the men without thinking. Her voice held calm strength. "He was hurt. I couldn't leave him outside." Kade's chest tightened again, but this time for a different reason. Her bravery and innocence collided with the danger right in front of her. The stranger looked from Lunara to Kade, fear creeping into his posture. He understood the weight of the situation. He understood exactly whose life he was now standing in. Kade walked toward them slowly. Lunara's breath caught. His men expected one thing. The wounded stranger expected another. But Lunara, she had no idea what Kade's next move meant for her. This moment, this room, carried a tension none of them could escape. Kade stopped inches from her. His voice came low and steady. "You brought him in." She nodded, fear flickering in her eyes. "He needed help." Kade didn't reply. Not yet. Because before he spoke, he weighed 2 worlds. the one he built and the one she softened. And for the first time in years, the decision wasn't clear. The room felt tighter with every passing second. Kade didn't raise his voice. He didn't move abruptly, but the silence he carried held a weight that made everyone freeze. Rax stepped forward first, his tone clipped. "She helped a man working against us. That's a breach." Joran added, "She sheltered someone we were tracking." Teal's voice came last, low and steady. "Kade, this is betrayal." The word hung in the air, sharp and heavy. Lunara flinched at it. Not because she believed she betrayed anyone, but because she finally sensed the danger she had stepped into. The stranger looked at her with guilt that came too late. She swallowed hard and turned to Kade. "I didn't know who he was," she said softly. "I saw someone in pain. I acted the only way I know how." Her voice trembled, not from fear of Kade, but from fear of losing whatever fragile connection they'd built. His men expected him to act immediately. This was his rule, his foundation, his line. Kade never ignored it. He never bent it. He never even paused. But tonight he had paused. Too long for comfort. Too long for his men to understand. Rax whispered sharply, "Kade, we can't let this pass. She broke the rule." Lunara's heart sank. She looked at Kade, and her voice lowered to a whisper. "I'm sorry, if this ruins what we had." Her chest tightened as she took a small step back. She expected the distance to grow now. She expected him to pull away. She expected the quiet bond they shared to disappear under the weight of his world. This was the moment she feared, the moment someone realized she didn't belong in his life. She lowered her eyes, bracing for the loss. But Kade didn't step back. He didn't speak to his men. He didn't deliver punishment. He looked at her. Only her. His world demanded consequence. His men demanded consistency. His past demanded he act with cold certainty. But his heart, the one she softened without trying, pulled him in a different direction. The air around them tightened as everyone waited for his verdict. Rax broke the silence. "What's your order?" Kade still didn't answer, because the truth was forming inside him with a clarity that startled even him. He wasn't angry at her. He was afraid for her, afraid of what this meant, afraid of how deeply she was now tied to his world, afraid of losing her to a rule he no longer believed in when it came to her. Lunara raised her eyes slowly, meeting his, and in that moment, everything between them shifted. Kade finally stepped forward, closing the space between them. Lunara didn't move. She held her breath, waiting for the moment that would define everything. Their connection, their future, their trust. He spoke quietly, but every word carried weight. "You think you betrayed me." Her lips parted slightly. "Didn't I?" "No," he said, voice steady. "You helped someone who needed help. That's who you are." His men exchanged stunned glances. This wasn't the response they expected. Not from him. Rax tried again. "Kade, he's tied to the group testing us. We can't excuse." Kade lifted a hand. Silence followed. He kept his eyes on Lunara, not on the men who had followed him for years. "You didn't know his intentions," he said. "You didn't hide him to hurt me. You weren't part of anything against us." Lunara's throat tightened. Her hands trembled. Her heartbeat raced so fast she felt it in her palms. "But your rule," she whispered. "I don't change the rule," he said softly. "I change how I see you." The room fell still. Her breath caught. She didn't know what to do with the warmth that spread through her chest. Part relief, part disbelief, part emotion she had tried to ignore for weeks. His men watched in silence, the tension shifting from accusation to confusion. Kade had never bent for anyone. He had never softened. He had never looked at someone the way he looked at her now. The stranger on the bed lowered his gaze, realizing how much he had stepped into something larger than his own survival. Lunara took a small breath, steady but emotional. "I was afraid I lost you." "You didn't," he said quietly. "You won't." Her eyes glistened. Not from fear this time, but from the overwhelming relief that washed over her. Then Kade did something that shocked even himself. He reached out and touched her wrist, the same wrist she had bandaged earlier that night, the same wrist his men accused her over. His thumb brushed gently over her skin. "Don't hide from me again," he said. Lunara nodded, voice soft. "Only if you don't push me away." "I won't." Their words weren't loud, but they carried more promise than any declaration. The emotional line between them, once subtle, was now unmistakable. His men knew this moment marked a shift. The stranger felt the pull in the room. Even Lunara, still shaken, sensed the change. This was the beginning of something deeper, something neither of them could deny anymore. Their bond had survived the rule that shaped his entire life. And this confrontation, heavy and intimate, opened a door that could no longer be closed. Kade stood in the center of the room, facing Lunara, knowing every decision he made tonight would echo through his entire world. His men watched in silence, waiting for him to enforce the rule he had lived by for years. But for the first time, he didn't look at them. He looked only at her. "You didn't betray me," he said softly, letting each word settle between them. Lunara's breath wavered. "But your rule—" "My rule doesn't apply to you," he said, "because you acted with care, not deceit." It was the first time he had spoken with that level of softness in front of anyone. His voice carried warmth, not command, concern, not judgment. The shift was undeniable. Rax exchanged a tense glance with Joran. They had seen Kade speak firmly, speak sharply, speak with cold precision. But this was new. "Kade, this sets a precedent," Joran warned quietly. "People will question you." "Let them question," Kade replied, still facing Lunara. "I won't punish someone for having compassion." His men froze. This was the moment they feared, the moment he chose something other than the rule, the moment their leader placed a person above the structure he built. Lunara stepped closer, searching his expression. "You're sure about this?" "Yes," he said. "You did what your heart guided you to do." "I won't call that betrayal." Her eyes filled with quiet emotion. The fear she carried all evening loosened from her chest, replaced by relief so deep she felt it in her shoulders. She took one more small step until they were close enough to feel each other's breath. "Thank you," she whispered. Kade reached out and brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, a gesture so gentle that even his guards looked away for a moment. It wasn't meant to be grand. It wasn't meant to be dramatic. It was simply him choosing honesty over distance. For Lunara, that touch meant everything. It meant safety. It meant trust. It meant she wasn't alone in this complicated world of his. Kade lowered his voice. "You don't ever have to fear losing me." She nodded, steady again. "And I won't fear caring for you." Their eyes held longer than either expected. In that silence, something tender settled, a connection stronger than the rule he had lived by his entire life. Kade had chosen her, not out of impulse, not out of guilt, but out of truth, a truth he could no longer deny. Before we move on, tell me this in the comments. Would you risk breaking a long-held rule if love challenged it? Or would you walk away out of fear? Your thoughts help this story grow and reach more viewers. If you're enjoying this journey, like the video and subscribe to the Lord of Hearts family for more powerful stories. The days that followed felt different, softer than anything Kade ever allowed himself to experience. Their connection didn't grow through dramatic moments. It grew through simple ones. Lunara made him tea one evening after a long meeting. She placed the cup in his hand and said, "You look tired." No one had told him that in years. He didn't respond with his usual guarded silence. He sat beside her instead. Another night, he walked her home from the clinic. The air was cool, and their shoulders brushed every few steps. She didn't move away. He didn't either. Their hands touched lightly, once, twice, until Kade finally turned his palm and let her fingers slip into his. The moment was quiet but filled with meaning. No pressure, no rush, just a shared warmth neither wanted to release. Lunara healed him in ways she didn't even realize. She asked how he slept. She noticed when his shoulders tensed. She placed her hand over his when he seemed lost in thought. Small gestures, but each one reached the parts of him he never let anyone see. And Kade gave her something too, something she thought she lost forever. Security, consistency, space to trust again. He walked at her pace. He answered her questions with honesty. He stayed patient when her past fears surfaced. One evening they sat by the marina, legs dangling above the water. Lunara leaned her head against his shoulder, and Kade let out a slow breath, the kind that came only when he felt safe. "You don't have to carry everything alone," she said gently. His chest tightened at her words. She didn't pry. She didn't demand. She simply offered steady presence. He turned to her and traced a soft line across her cheek with the back of his fingers. "Being with you, it makes the world quieter." Her eyes softened. "Being with you makes me feel protected again." Their foreheads touched lightly, a tender moment that spoke louder than any declaration. Neither pushed the moment forward. Neither stepped back. This was love built in soft tones, in slow breaths, in the safety of stillness. Lunara gave him peace he never knew he needed. Kade gave her trust she never thought she'd feel again. Together, they found something rare, a balance between strength and softness. And as the night breeze moved around them, they both understood the same quiet truth. Some connections aren't found. They are earned, slowly, through care that stays even when the world gets loud. Kade stood on the balcony of his apartment, overlooking the city he once controlled with nothing but force and fear. For years, he believed strength meant distance. Power meant silence. Trust meant danger. But now, as he leaned against the railing, he thought about Lunara and realized how much he had changed. He wasn't the man who punished every mistake. He wasn't the man who shut people out. He wasn't the man who let old wounds shape every decision. Lunara had shifted something in him, not through pressure but through presence. He whispered to himself, "I never knew softness could protect me too." Across the city, Lunara sat by her small window with a warm cup in hand, reflecting on her own growth. She remembered the woman she used to be, guarded, cautious, carrying old hurt like a shield. She feared trusting again, feared being left, feared giving more than someone valued. But Kade showed her something different. He listened. He stayed. He respected her pace. She whispered, "I never knew safety could feel like this." Their love wasn't loud. It was steady. It taught both of them lessons they never expected to learn. Kind hearts can change people. Lunara didn't try to fix Kade. She simply treated him with care. And that gentleness reached the parts of him no one else touched. Strength is not cruelty. Kade learned that leading with calm and compassion made him stronger, not weaker. Love is not weakness. They learned that choosing each other didn't take anything away. It added balance, peace, and meaning. Forgiveness protects your peace. Kade forgave a mistake rooted in kindness, and in doing so, he protected both his heart and hers. One evening, they met at the waterfront where everything began. Lunara slipped her hand into his, and Kade pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. "You changed my life," he said quietly. She smiled. "No, we changed each other." The world around them moved on, boats, lights, distant conversations, but their moment stayed still, filled with a calm they both fought years to find. Their story became more than romance. It became a reminder for anyone watching. Love grows in steady steps. Trust heals when it's given with care. And sometimes, the strongest people are the ones who allow themselves to soften. If this story touched you, take a moment to subscribe to the Lord of Hearts family. Share what lessons stood out to you the most. Your reflections help others grow, and your support helps these stories continue.